Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for the remix. Yes, I promise I won't make too many dad jokes about it today, but there's just something about that word that makes me chuckle for some reason. I can't explain it. Anyway, we are of course checking out these wonderful fellas today, which is Ocular Furor and Riot, otherwise known as the cartoon characters Frenzy and Rumble. Now, they're not new toys by any means, so you will of course find plenty of other video reviews of them out there, but I figured why not throw my own personal little spin into the ether, right? So, and they are coming courtesy of TF Source, so I'll put a link to their site in the video description as well, just in case they take your fancy and you've never picked them up before. Then of course you can go ahead and do that now. Now, the box itself is a fairly nondescript affair with just a little like a sort of cardboard box, but it's the contents that we're really after, isn't it? So I've already cut the tape, so let's go ahead and check out these guys. Yes, included in the box are the two toys themselves, and of course these pile driver accessories as well, which are well, they've got their own little feature to them, their own little gimmick, so we'll check that out shortly. And also included here is this little baggie with a couple of extra heads in there, and these sort of decals as well to make them look a little bit like 1980s cassettes, which is kind of cool. And then also included in the clamshell here, just underneath, is this kind of rock accessory, which looks pretty cool. It's obviously for kind of mounting the toys and kind of having them in a bit of an action scene. We'll check that out in a bit. Rather ominous little warning labels on these things, which is actually just telling you to be careful with how you use them and to use the instructional video. But given the kind of like hazard label tape on there and the sort of shape and size of these things, I don't know, they almost remind me of something that I would have mishandled in my youth. Do you know what I mean? Like a fireworks thing or something like that. I don't know, is that just me? Now, speaking of my youth, of course, these guys come in sort of fairly authentic looking little cassette boxes, actually, like little clear plastic cassette boxes, which, you know, if you're not from the 1980s like me, you know, then you may not be familiar with these. I always get horrified by stories of you know, kids today not understanding what cassettes are and things like that. Yeah, that's what they are. I say horrified more in terms of my own mortality than anything else. Do you know what I mean? Of course, the format's a little bit outdated now, and it's not exactly making a resurgence, a bit like vinyl is sometimes. But still, it's really fun to see it represented here in toy form. And I do think, you know, as actually I mentioned when we looked at their Laserbeak and Buzzsaw as well, you know, for that video, I just think they've done an absolute superb job with this. The level of attention to detail with these kind of cassette cases, and it really kind of commits to the bit of what they're trying to do here, you know? So on the front, they've obviously got a nice little bit of artwork here and whatever else, and then this kind of molded in little circular pattern, which is really, really quite cool. That's actually molded in the plastic. And then if you turn the whole thing around, of course, you get a little bit of text just on the back. And again, the whole thing is designed to replicate the look and feel of those original 1980s cassettes. So it unfolds in exactly the same way. You can take your cassette out in that same way as well. A little bit tight in the box, but it will come out just like that. And then the really cool thing, I think, is that even the instructions are done in that same fashion, which again, if you are familiar with 1980s cassettes, it'll be you know exactly what you're in for, right? See, this just takes me back to the fun days of making mixtapes and all of that kind of fun stuff. So as I say, in here you get the actual instructions themselves, just there, which look really, really very cool. Really love the way that's done on the leaflet. I think that's super cool. And you do get a character card for each of the two characters represented here as well. And here are the cassette modes themselves, and looking really quite tidy. Of course, here you've got represented Rumble and Frenzy, or is it Rumble and Frenzy? I don't know, whichever way around really. There's a little rhyme that I always use in these situations to try and remember which one's which, and it goes like this. It's Rumble is red, Frenzy is blue, or maybe you disagree. I don't give a f. I kid. It's just, I really don't care. I mean, why are we still having this same debate? It's been almost 4 decades, for crying out loud. Do you know what I mean? Come on, G1 fans, we're starting to look bad at this stage. Now, I know plenty of people do have their preference, of course, but in my mind, if it's cartoon, this is Rumble. If it's comic or toy, this is Rumble. And that's literally it, isn't it? They're just different depending on what different parts of the franchise you're paying attention to on any particular day. End of. What we hopefully can all agree on is how neat and tidy these things are, as I say. And they do a really nice job at kind of hanging together and feeling very cohesive as a kind of cassette form anyway. It's not exact, do you know what I mean? But it is kind of it's a decent approximation, I would say. You know, that's true on both sides. If you flip this thing over, it actually looks good on both sides. It's not just like one of those that happens, you know, very often with cassette forms in Transformers where it's like one side looks good, you flip it over and it's a bit like, ooh. That's not the case here, do you know what I mean? It looks good from all angles. That's not to say that you don't get some robo bump if you kind of go looking for it, like obviously there are little panels and things along here, along the one side, stuff like that. But again, you know, it's all pretty well hidden actually. You know, you've even got little spokes inside the little wheel there, which, you know, for some of you it may just mean that meme, you know, that you always get on the internet where you're like, if you can't connect this with a pencil, then you didn't live in the 80s or whatever that meme says. But, you know, realistically, that's the bit that obviously where the tape is wound, no actual tape for it to kind of connect to or anything like that. But still, it's a nice little detail. And that's really kind of it with these guys out of the box. I mean, if anything, they're a little bit plain looking. Like, I do think that perhaps Rumble is, or Frenzy, whichever one, is slightly more, I'm going to go with Rumble today, okay? I'm going to go with Rumble because we're going cartoon. They're kind of cartoon-esque, so, you know, stick with me on this one. The blue one is Rumble for today. If I say Rumble, that's the one I mean, the blue one. Just live with it. Anyway, yeah, he's kind of more successful, I think, just because of, you know, how naturally cohesive that color scheme is, you know, with the kind of different shades of blue and kind of lavender or whatever it is, all kind of melding in quite nicely, whereas Frenzy's kind of red and black is, you know, makes the legs a little bit more obvious, perhaps, but still, you know, they're both very tidy, but maybe a little bit nondescript, a bit kind of plain, if anything, but still nice and tidy. Now, again, you can change that up a bit because they do include stickers for these in the box, so that's pretty cool. And I hadn't realized that there is two sets, and there is, but you know, two sides for each set as well. So they got you covered. That's what I would say. And look here, you've got even kind of a facsimile of that tape reel just inside there that I just kind of referred to before. Even some really nice details on these as well. So I do think they look really, really cool. Just coming in for a bit of closer inspection so you can see what I'm saying. But even like the little text and all of that kind of stuff, it's all kind of highly evocative of the kind of 80s look. You know, so that's pretty cool. Do like that a lot. Ultimately, I don't think I'm going to be applying them on my set as I kind of want them to still look tune accurate in robot mode, but it is there if indeed that's your jam. Alternatively, if you do prefer, then you can actually get a set of labels for these guys from Toyhax.com as well, otherwise known as Repo labels sometimes. And yeah, they've done a set for both of these guys separately, and they look really good. They're kind of more of a toyetic G1 toy inspired set. But you know, that might be worth a go if indeed the kind of tune accurate look is not your bag. Then you know, they're definitely worth a look. Of course, Toyhax do a lot of kind of you know, Autobot and Decepticon labels, but a lot of reproduction sets and new sets for toys like this. So definitely worth a gander. Now, speaking of those original toys, of course, it's time to do a few comparisons, and here you have those very same vintage specimens. So, of course, this time the the names are indeed the other way around. So if you are a cartoon fan anyway, they're reversed, or if you're a toy fan, they're the right way around. Who can say? Who can say? So, of course, this time this is Rumble and this is Frenzy, and that is definitive, my friends, because that is the name that it says on the box. So there's really no argument about it, is there? In this case, anyway. So yeah, so there you go. Those are the original toys. Of course, a lot smaller because they were designed to fit inside the original Generation 1 Soundwave. And one thing that I maybe neglected to mention in my review of Ocular Max Vulture and Buzzard was that these original cassettes are the same size as micro cassettes. A couple of people mentioned that to me in the comments, picked me up on it, and quite rightly so, as I did not say it last time, but there you go. And then, of course, Takara followed suit with that when they brought out their Masterpiece versions, which is just here. So this is Masterpiece. This is actually, interestingly, this is Masterpiece Frenzy. I had to think there for a minute, because when Takara did the Masterpiece versions, they went with the original toy naming. So this is Frenzy, not Rumble, even though most Takara MPs tend to follow the cartoon as a kind of, you know, main reference. They did bizarrely keep the toy names for these guys. Don't know why, but they did. So there you go. So just adding fuel on the fire of this whole debate, I guess, isn't it, really? So, so yeah, technically this is whoever you want it to be, and then both of these are Frenzy. Not Rumble, but you know, some people, you can call them Rumble if you want. As I say, I'm going to stop talking about it now, honestly. But anyway, there you go, 3 versions of the same character. And of course, you've got the same deal here with whoever this is, and in your mind. And this again is the Masterpiece version, just here on the end. The original Generation 1 version, of course, Ocular Max, in case that wasn't clear somehow. But yeah, I do think it's really interesting the size that they went with the MP versions, because they, you know, obviously chose to keep that you know, the same size as the original toys. You know, and again, as people have mentioned, it's micro cassette sized. But I do think that the inspiration behind, you know, having the Masterpiece versions that size was that they could then work retroactively with Generation 1 Soundwave, you know, that the new Masterpiece cassettes could fit in the original Soundwave toy from the 80s, which I think is a really kind of interesting play pattern, and not the first time Takara have made kind of slightly weird decisions like that based on those kind of play patterns. But still, it is an oddity, because if anything, it makes the MP cassettes a little bit undersized, whereas on merit of these guys, them being cassette sized, they're a bit oversized, as we'll see. So it's an interesting one. Now, to really kind of emphasize that size difference, let's bring in a couple of Soundwaves. And of course, here we have the masterpiece Soundwave MP13, absolutely brilliant toy that it is. And here we have the Generation 1 Soundwave. This is actually the more recent Walmart reissue from Hasbro, which is well worth picking up. I love that original Soundwave toy, but I'll talk more about that in just a minute. And but anyway, here you can see that actually it's fairly consistent, the size of the two alt modes, the tape deck modes, between the two toys. I mean, of course, the original is a bit smaller, and the cassettes actually, as I say, they are the same size completely. So it's kind of difficult to know where these guys fit in, because they're not going to interact with anything else going on there. And of course, they're not designed to. They are meant to be, as I say, real world size, which is kind of fun in itself. But yeah, with any Soundwave, they're just not going to kind of work. And of course, with these guys, they all have kind of working tape deck modes, and you can actually put their tapes inside respectively, and you've got that kind of cool feature of being able to mix and match those tapes as well, so the G1 tapes could go in this lad and vice versa. But then these guys, if anything, they are really nice, but they're kind of the outliers in that respect. And as we're kind of hovering on the subject, I mean, some of you may know I'm not one to avoid going off-piste when the opportunity calls. I figured it was just a nice chance to bring in this guy, who is actually my original Generation 1 Soundwave, still in this box and in really nice condition and everything. But if anything, it's just kind of worth mentioning, because this toy, this particular specimen, has a real special place in my heart, because it was actually the thing that, if anything, got me back into collecting at one stage anyway. I remember getting it with, it was the first toy that I bought, not in childhood, if it makes sense. The first one kind of coming back to the hobby for the first time. And it was with my, my late uncle, at a toy fair in the Midlands, NEC Toy Fair, which I'm sure some of you will know if you're in the UK or whatever. And I mean, it was years and years and years ago now, but I remember seeing it up high on a dealer table and just being absolutely amazed by seeing, boxed Generation 1. Wasn't even called Generation 1, I don't think, at the time. Maybe it was, I don't recall. But just seeing it for the first time. I never had a Soundwave in childhood, and just being absolutely amazed with it. I think I must have been in my mid to late teens at the time, and I still have it today, just because it's a real kind of keepsake for me. I mean, I love the Walmart reissue, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's a special memory. Anyway, I thought that would be worth sharing. But to get us back on track, here you go. You can see Ocular Max's effort with a straight up comparison with Masterpiece Soundwave again. And yeah, I guess it just depends if that works for you or not. I'm sure a lot of people won't be too worried about the size difference, but there you go. Of course, what they do work really well with size-wise is Ocular Max's other cassette efforts. And here you have Vulture and Buzzard, which I mentioned earlier. I did a review of these guys not so long ago. It's still on the channel, so check that out if you want. And yeah, of course, they're exactly the same size, although stylistically quite different, which is really interesting to see, because of course, not only do these guys have a lot more details on them, a little bit wobbly as they are, they do have a lot more details. I mean, you can see much more of the kind of real world cassette sticker that they have on them that you can normally write on, and even kind of little an attempt at the kind of actual cassette reel itself inside there. They look a lot more kind of real world in that regard, but they feel quite different as well. These guys a bit more blocky, and just kind of, I don't know, just come across a little bit different. Same size, but I don't know that they necessarily look all that cohesive. Anyway, I'm sure for a lot of people the main draw, of course, is going to be the robot mode, so why don't we go ahead and get them transformed up and check it out. Right, that's transformation done, and you know what, nothing too difficult, but maybe just a little bit fiddly in places, and that's mostly on account of certain panels, certain bits, not really wanting to kind of tab in too sort of flush, you know, or too securely, and yeah, I don't know, there's a kind of a moving feel to the whole thing that makes it ever so slightly not satisfying. It's absolutely fine, nothing too complicated or intricate or anything like that. It won't present a challenge. It's just that it doesn't kind of, I don't know, it doesn't lock together in maybe the way that I might quite like. You know, for example, these panels on the sides of the legs which kind of rotate round from the tape mode and then kind of peg in at the sides, I don't know, they've just got a kind of slightly squishy feel to them. So even when they're sort of pegged, they do kind of click, which is quite satisfying in itself, but I don't know, there you look, you can even see there. There's just that slightly sort of pliable feel to it, that or squishy, that just kind of, I don't know, they don't feel, that one's a little bit better, but certainly on this one and in a couple of other places, it just doesn't kind of feel like it's going in as much as you would want it to. There's a really good example just there. I'm also not a major fan of the hand sliders. I mean, look, hand sliders are a thing. They've been a thing on Transformers since the beginning, and they will be, I'm sure, until the end of time. So really not too worried about that, obviously with a little mechanism to just slide them out like that. But actually getting it to work is a little bit of a pain. And then the hand just has such a propensity for folding back inside that I've just found, you know, even briefly, I'm sort of forever just wanting to pull it out a little bit further just so it kind of clicks. So again, if it just clicked into position, that would be fantastic. It would be no problem, but it doesn't, sadly. Now, the other bit that is quite unsatisfying is the guns, but we'll get to that in just a minute maybe. But you know what, overall, transformation-wise, as I say, really nothing here to challenge you too much. Slight bit of squishiness along the way, but it's very clever as well. Very, very clever conversion indeed. I do like the way that the kind of tape reel bits kind of fold up into the shoulders. I think that's particularly cool. And the result is a very handsome pair of bots. I mean, certainly the general look of these characters is down here, right? Like it's totally, they've nailed it. Like, you know, you look at them and you just think, yeah, no, that's Cartoon, Frenzy and Rumble, or Rumble and Frenzy, whatever your preference is, I don't care. But, you know, they really do have the look of the characters sorted. So in that regard, you know, job done. I mean, look, the face sculpts on these guys are small, but really nicely done. You know, there's a little bit of character in there. They really do a good job at recalling the character from the animation. And yeah, I really think that they work very, very nicely indeed. That said, maybe one thing that is worth mentioning is this little paint chip just on the bottom of the face, on the chin, which is really, really annoying. And I think actually I didn't spot it out of the box, but may have been caused by just folding the face down like so. You know, just so that there's a slight bit of paint rub going on there. And I probably wouldn't mention it if it was just on the one, but actually if I bring this guy forward, there we go, you can see it's on both of them. And I think that's that's certainly what makes me think that it is caused by that just kind of downward articulation, that it's actually the paint rubbing off. There's yeah, it's a little bit annoying to say the least. Now, I really, really like this gold paint that they've got on various areas, such as on the chest just here. I think that, you know, it's a simple thing, but it stands out really nicely and it does kind of catch the light. It looks cool. Of course, the equivalent on the blue guy is the silver paint just here and on the chest as well. And again, that looks nice and does kind of catch the light. Now, one thing that is a little bit weird are these panels on the front of the legs just here on the shins, because, you know, again, they kind of fold inward during transformation. And it's a clever idea. Like, I really like the idea of it, but the result is that you can see how I just think they look a little bit messy. So first of all, they don't really kind of lock in, again, you know, a bit like the side panels on the legs. They don't really kind of have a definitive position where they kind of lock in and feel really secure or whatever else. And then the actual visual look of them, you know, you have this very visible seam right down the middle, which is okay. I can live with it, but you know, I mean, it's a small thing, but I don't know. Kind of what's maybe a little bit worse is the kind of slightly mismatched kind of look to some of the panels as well. Particularly, again, it's this right leg on this dude, you know, which doesn't feel like it kind of locks together particularly well, and just, I don't know, just looks a little bit messy maybe. Big fan of the feet though. I know I don't often comment on robot feet too much, but on these guys, I don't know why, they just really kind of appeal to me for some reason. You know, and they do make for very clean looking and tidy robot forms, generally speaking. You know, minimal kibble going on. I mean, really very little kibble at all, do you know what I mean? And I really kind of think that they look generally very good, very kind of nice, attractive robot modes. They look like they should. And I think what is throwing me off ever so slightly is the proportions, because they just feel like a little bit lanky for my liking. I don't know, like they could just be a bit smaller and it would work somehow. And I think the main culprit is this midriff section just here, which you can see here. It's very notable that there's this kind of blue bit sticking out from the kind of lavender either side. And I don't know, it just looks like, if anything, that this panel should just fold down, or the whole thing should just sit a bit lower to kind of eliminate that midriff. And I get why it's there, because it's actually a hinge for a bit of an ab crunch. I mean, we'll do articulation in just a minute, but it is strange in that it's not on the animation model. Again, we'll do a comparison. And you know, if anything, it kind of ends up looking like he's wearing like a crop top or something, like a jumper that just doesn't kind of pull down far enough. Maybe not helped by the fact that he's got this kind of squished belly button just there. I don't know, it's a weird look in my opinion. But you know, that slight quibble aside, they do look really, really great. And they definitely feel like the animation. You know, they've got that kind of thuggish, punkish kind of vibe to them that I just really like. Now, unfortunately, I do have a couple of tiny grumbles with the quality on these guys. Nothing major, but just worth mentioning. First up on this dude, the blue dude, the arm is not loose so much, but just, I don't know, there's definitely a bit of wobble there that you can see. And obviously they're on a ball joint, so, you know, there's no screw or anything like that. I do think actually the way that the shoulders articulate is very strange, but we'll come to that. But yeah, you can see just there that there's a definite bit of flop, so I'll try and fix that, but just a little bit annoying straight out of the box. What's a kind of even more annoying, let's say, is on this guy, is this gun, which is just, yeah, you can see there, it just flops around completely. All of the others are fine actually, or seemingly anyway. I mean, they're not like super tight, but they will kind of hold. But on this one, that just refuses, even if I try, just, you know, to keep it in place. It will not at all. It's just very, very loose on the pin that connects it there. So yeah, bit of a bummer. Now, in terms of accessories, both these guys come with these little spare heads, which is cool. I mean, as you can see here, by default, they come with the smirking face already on, and then they come with this kind of more stoic face in the box. And, you know, I'm not going to go ahead and swap them out right now because it involves screws, and that's, some of you may know that's a little bit of a bugbear of mine, having to use a screwdriver to swap out heads. I just, you know, I can never find a time where I want to be doing that, let's put it that way. But there you go, you can see a straight up comparison just there. I actually prefer the smirking ones anyway, to be honest. I think they benefit, you know, kind of feel like the character a little bit more anyway. But you know, it's nice that they did that and that they included that option. I will say that actually the white paint is not maybe as discernible in hand as it is in on camera. Do you know what I mean? The camera kind of picks up the details a little bit more, but you know, the faces, they look really, really good. But of course, the other main gimmick on offer here are the guns, which can be clipped into the back, as we've seen, but can also clip very nicely into their hands, like so. Unfortunately, that weight isn't helping this arm at all. It just will not stay up now. Do you know what I mean? If you try and pose it with the gun, it's pretty loose, which is annoying. Very annoying, there you go. In terms of articulation though, of course you've got a decent range of motion at the head, which is on a hinge, so it can look up and down very nicely and side to side on a little ball joint. Shoulders are on ball joints, as I already mentioned. Very weird here because this kind of shoulder piece here, they kind of, you know, it's obviously a rectangular shoulder, and it kind of impedes on the side. So what is annoying is that it means you can't have the shoulder position between that and that. And it literally kind of flops up towards almost like a 90-degree angle, which is just a bit of weird design, really. I mean, you can kind of get it, like if you balance it, but it's an oddity. Because they're on a ball joint, of course, they will go all the way over as well. Now, you will then get a bit of bicep swivel, just like that. And then the elbows are on a double hinge, so you get very decent bend at the elbow, like so, kind of well past 90 degrees. No wrist swivel of any kind, but the fingers are on one pin, all one molded piece, and they will move as such. Now, coming down to the lower half, of course, you've got waist swivel just there, which is good, and of course an ab crunch, as I already mentioned, you know, thanks to that little belly button section just there. Now the hips, there are hip flaps, which will kind of need to be moved out the way in order to make the most out of the hips, just like so. And then you've got this 2 points of articulation just there at the hip, which is very, very nice, and that'll go quite far actually, just a little bit, maybe past 90 degrees. Now at the knees, that will bend like so to 90, and then there is a very decent range of articulation at the feet, because the ankles are on a ball joint, so you get a lot of tilt there as well, so that's really, really good. Which, you know, all told, makes them very nicely articulated little things, all considered. I think they articulate beautifully actually. They're really, really nice. It's a real kind of blessing of this set. Do you know what I mean? They just feel a lot of fun to pose. They've got a nice fluidity to them, and I think they look great when they're posed up. Really, really nice. Yeah, I mean, really, my only grumble again is that shoulder, which is just such a weird design. I just don't know, you know, why they did it like that. So it kind of has to kind of click in that way. Very, very strange. And then of course we come to the kind of main gimmick of this set, which is these things, which is these pile driver accessories. I know they look a little bit like letterboxes, UK letterboxes anyway, but they're not. They are the pile drivers, and they actually feature a motorized gimmick, so they need batteries, and then they will work automatically, so we'll take a look at that. And yeah, I have seen it in person previously. A mate of mine brought them to the pub once, and you know, we had a go with it there, and much hilarity ensued, let's say, because it's quite funny. But let's take a look. Now firstly, just a quick helpful note on what batteries you're going to need. It's these ones, LR44, otherwise commonly known as AG13. That's often what you see them listed as well. And very common battery for use in a lot of third-party toys, just in case you're wondering. There you go, they're very cheap to pick up. Then of course you just want to take the battery cover off like so, and pop your batteries in. One and then the other. Now I didn't find any instructional vids on specifically how to install the batteries, just showing them already in place, but it's a little bit fiddly, but not too bad. There you go, just kind of slide in, and that should now mean she rides. Then of course what you want to do is just fold the arm up like so, and you actually want to bend it just at that part there, which is the actual elbow, and then fold the hand away like that. Then bring in your pile driver, flip up the lid, and that should just slide on. There we go, from the bottom, and then you can just close it up at the top and you're good to go. And there we go, that's all installed. Before we get that action on the go, let's just take a minute to appreciate quite how ridiculous that looks, but I absolutely love it. It looks spot on, let's be fair. Then you want to bring in this little base plate piece, which they both come with, obviously. And you don't have to use this for the motorized action, but you know, they do give it to you, so why don't we try it out? And obviously the feet kind of tab in there. It's kind of meant to look like broken ground, if anything. Looks all right. Then of course it's the moment of truth. Now I have just quickly swapped the pile drivers around. I realized I put them on with the screw covers facing forward, and obviously it just maybe looks a bit nicer with them at the back. And yeah, here we go. Yeah, we're cooking now. What even is my life? Seriously, what is going on? Oh my god. This is actually quite mesmerizing. Like, I could just sit and watch this for hours, I swear. Well, I don't know why I thought this was going to look menacing somehow. It just, if anything, looks a little bit wrong. So I've had him going for about a minute or so now, and you can see that this one on his left arm is definitely giving up the ghost a little bit. I don't know if it's the mechanism getting gummed up or if it's the batteries or what it is, but this one's still going strong. Oh yeah, that's probably enough of that, isn't it? Oh, there we go, my ears. God, it's quite loud. It's quite loud, if anything. Absolutely insane. I have just noticed as well that actually this arm is starting to sag a bit as well. Obviously just with the additional weight. This one seems to hold quite nicely actually, but this one, a bit like the the other arm on the other character. I was going to say Rumble, whichever one you prefer. I did say I'd call him Rumble, so yeah, Rumble. And yeah, this arm seems to be giving up the ghost a little bit, which is unfortunate. So yeah, really nice idea and a lot of fun. I really like what they're trying to do with that. I do think that maybe the execution is not quite living up to it, with this one kind of gumming up a little bit, whatever's going on with that. I mean, maybe it is the batteries, but it's literally been a minute. Do you know what I mean? You would expect them to last a bit longer than that. And I don't think it is anyway, because this one, as I say, is still running strong. And then new batteries as well, just to be clear. So something there. Obviously got the old shoulder that's kind of given up a little bit as well, and feeling a little bit loose. That's unfortunate. And then I can't even show you my my Rumble pile drivers because, well, this one works just fine, which is good. However, this one, nope, will not work. Absolutely will not work, which is really, really annoying me because I kind of wanted to see them both in action for the full effect, but it will not work. I've tried 3 different sets of batteries in the thing. Funnily enough, it was the first one I tried, so initially I was like, do they just not work at all, or what's going on? But yeah, cannot get it to work. Really annoying. Now, there is also a kind of weird storage solution with these pile drivers where you can store them on the back, like a little backpack, like so. I really don't care for it. Like, I just couldn't care about it, really. Do you know what I mean? Firstly, it looks kind of weird. I mean, it feels very, very back heavy with them on, and even then, visually, I don't really feel like it gives you much. But the actual solution for doing it is a strange one too, because it actually involves, I think it's going to come out. There we go. It actually involves, putting the gun on the back, as you can probably see, and then folding up the gun inside the pile driver. And it's fiddly. I mean, it's just really fiddly. It doesn't really give you a lot. I'm discounting it personally. And just a little word to the wise, but I would be super careful with the plastic on these pile drivers. I mean, it seems fine. I haven't any breaks or anything, but you can probably just see inside there that I've got a couple of stress marks already, which is unfortunate to say the least. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one with this this gimmick, because I kind of like the idea of it, and it is fun when it works. But I don't know, just sometimes less is more. Do you know what I mean? Like, the simpler things can just be better. And I think actually they could have just had a simple design like this of the pile drivers that just clipped onto the arms, a bit like the official Masterpiece toy does, and that would have been fine. Do you know what I mean? You didn't really need more than that. So although it is fun, yeah, I don't know if it quite works for me, to be honest. Anyway, let's do a few comparisons with these guys. And again, here you've got the different generations, as it were, of these guys, Rumble and Frenzy, whichever one's which in your mind's eye. And here, of course, you've got Masterpiece Frenzy, actually, as the toy goes. Anyway, that's the name on the packaging. And G1 Frenzy, just there. That is indisputable that is who that is. And then over here, you've got Masterpiece Rumble and G1 Rumble as well. So, take your pick. But yeah, really interesting to see. And of course, again, the Masterpiece versions are significantly smaller than the Ocular Max effort and much more in line with the G1 toy, although slightly taller and a lot more intricate. But yeah, no doubt it's night and day between what Ocular Max have done here and the official Takara Tomy toys. But I say that with no slight whatsoever on Takara Tomy's effort, because actually I think these guys are excellent. Do you know what I mean? I absolutely love these two little cassette guys. All of the Masterpiece cassettes I think are terrific, honestly. I mean, Rat Bat is without a doubt my favourite, but these guys are pretty cool as well. They're just small, that's all. So if they were larger and kind of more in scale with whatever else is going on, it would fit a little bit better. They're not the most cartoon accurate things ever, but I still really love the design. I'm sure though people will get a kick out of what Ocular Max have done with these two, just on account of them being so much closer to the cartoon and that bit larger as well. Although the scale is an interesting one. And I think you can really see what I mean by that if you take a look at them both in comparison with MP Soundwave, as the official effort on the left just there does look really tiny, and I've always thought that they look tiny, to be fair. Whereas Ocular Max's effort, obviously significantly larger, and I suspect might be more in line with what people might imagine the character of Rumble to kind of look like, in terms of stature in comparison to Soundwave. Actually, for my money, I'd probably go for something a little bit in between these two. I mean, if you do whip out the official holy scale chart, you will notice that actually Rumble seems to come up to sort of knee height against Soundwave. So on that basis alone, officially the Takara Tomy effort would be better, I guess, but still it looks a little bit too small for my eye. It's all eye of the beholder stuff, this it's not like the characters were ever really a consistent height in the cartoon and they stuck to it, religiously forevermore. It was up and down all over the place, wasn't it? So it's kind of whatever floats your boat, I think, at the end of the day. For me personally, I think something maybe kind of in between these two options might be preferable. But again, they've been dictated by the size of real-world microcassettes and cassette tapes and whatever else. So yeah, this is what we've ended up with. Anyway, there you go. There's the full lot of options for your cassettes, including the Generation 1 as well, with their respective sound waves. And yeah, it is interesting to see the sort of varying heights going on here. And I don't know, maybe we'll get it right one day, who knows, maybe we'll get another version of Soundwave officially, maybe Fans Toys will nail it with theirs, who's to say, but for now, yeah, these are your options. Now I will say that I do think that the size disparity, if anything, is really not as bad as it is with Ocular Max's own Vulture and Buzzard, which is, well, they're a big pair of birds. Let's be fair, that's a chonkin pair of birds, all right. I mean, look at the size of them, it's just ridiculous. And again, it's because they've gone for this route of making the cassette modes, real world sized, and consequently the bird modes are just gigantic. I mean, it's kind of silly, but hey. And there is a little bit of that going on with old Rumble and Frenzy here. But to a lesser degree, it doesn't bother me as much, as I must admit, as it does with these guys, and with Ravage actually, who is similarly huge. But yeah, there you go. And of course, in terms of other comparisons, here they are with Masterpiece Laserwave or Shockwave and Megatron. And again, does that work for you in terms of height? You decide, ultimately. Do you know what I mean? I think it just about gets away with it for my taste. I don't know, I can live with it. And I do think that they, looks-wise, visually, they look really, really nice with these kind of more toony masterpieces. I think it works. Similar result, of course, with something like the Make Toys Seekers. Here you've got Lightning, Skycrow, and Meteor, of course. And I think they work really well together. I think the style, of the toys, it really kind of meshes really nicely across two different third-party companies. And I do think a lot of people will be happier with these Ocular Max guys than they will with the official Masterpiece effort, even. I think for me, maybe it works a bit better, actually. Even though I do think they are a little bit tall, I still think it works maybe a bit better. And then here you have them with some of the rest of Ocular Max's recent output. You've got their Combaticons, you've got Probus, Fraudo, or Fraudo, whichever you prefer, and Impetus. And I think they look really, really good with these guys. I mean, I love these Ocular Max Combaticons, as indeed anybody that's seen all of those videos that I made will attest to. And lo and behold, I think that works pretty well. And then here we go versus a couple of official Masterpiece carbots as well. You've got Sunstreaker and Hound. And of course, the comparison with Hound especially is one that you know, a lot of people will want to see with Rumble, because they share a very kind of famous scene together, you know, in the pilot episode. And there you go. I think actually height-wise, to my eye, that works pretty well. Yes, these two have a bit of a confrontation in the cartoon, a bit of a dust-up, which leads to such memorable trash talk as, "You couldn't swim, what makes you think you can fight?" I mean, he must have been reeling from that one for days, no? Anyway, I do think that the height works pretty well here, because, you know, in order for Rumble to be kind of considered, let's say, at least a little bit of a kind of physical threat to Hound, you know, they need to be kind of in the same ballpark at least. And I think that looks good. I like it. So yeah, really, it's up to you height-wise whether these guys work for you or not. I'm kind of warming up to the idea, to be honest, of them being a little bit taller. You know, as I say, I've always kind of felt like the Masterpiece, the official Masterpiece toys, were just too small. And you know, seeing these guys really kind of bears that through for me a little bit. Even though the holy scale chart, the official scale chart, may say a little bit different, I still think the height of these taller guys works pretty well. Wish they were maybe a touch smaller, a smidge shorter, but still, it works okay. And then of course, in terms of other comparisons, here is Rumble with his animation model, and you can see how that looks just there, you know, in comparison. And yeah, I think it works pretty well. Honestly, I think a lot of the details are really spot on, as I say. I mean, there is even a little kind of molded space just here for a Decepticon logo from, again, you can get them from Toyhax, so that would work really well. And I do feel like Ocular Max have kind of really got the design down very, very nicely. As I say, maybe slightly elongated proportions, but generally speaking, it's pretty spot on, isn't it? In conclusion then, where are we up to with these guys? Well, I do think it's a bit of a tough one. It's actually the design of them I really rate. Like, I like the robot modes, they're superposable, you know, and a lot of fun generally. And I do think that they do a great job at kind of recalling the characters from the animation. And so in that regard, you know, I think that they're a real kind of success. Nice accessories as well. Although I do think that the pile drivers are way too fiddly and just, you know, don't work as they should. So they could have been a little bit simpler. But on the whole, it's a really nicely designed package, and I really like that. Unfortunately, then there are a couple of QC errors along the way. You know, they've both got, particularly on the blue one, Rumble, you know, they've got slightly loose joints at the shoulders, so that's unfortunate. You know, I've got a floppy gun on Frenzy, so that's annoying. Little paint chips just on their chins, which is starting to bother me a little bit, so that's annoying. I've got a pile driver that doesn't work. I've got a leg that doesn't kind of clip together very well during transformations. So, you know, it all adds up. It's little stuff. The pile driver not working is pretty unforgivable, but the rest of it, you know, you could kind of think, okay, yeah, well, not brilliant, but I'll take it. But it starts to mount up a little bit, these kind of little flaws, imperfections, whatever, and it is annoying, needless to say. That said, I'm still feeling some goodwill for this set on the whole, because I just like the designs, I like the look of them, I like what Ocular Max do generally. I am feeling a little bit forgiving. So, you know, I think it's toot-worthy today. It's toot-worthy, but it's a kind of reserved toot, do you know what I mean? Just on the basis of knowing what you're in for with a bit of the kind of quality. And it's not top tier Ocular Max from what I've seen from them. You know, it's not on par with their Combaticons and whatever else. So yeah, they're toot-worthy, but it's a kind of a soft toot, do you know what I mean? A toot. But what are your thoughts on these guys? You know, they're not new by any means. I mean, they've been out a couple of years. It's just something that I chose to review. So, you know, do you own them or not? Do you like them or not? Would really love to hear what your thoughts are as well. Also interested to hear your feedback on the kind of new look of the videos, you know, the new background and everything, because that's still, you know, a bit of a new thing that I'm trying out. So do you like the new look or not? Would love to hear. And please do go ahead and drop me a like for today's video as well. That's always helpful. And of course, I will put a link to TF Source's listing for these guys in the video description. They're still in stock at the moment at TF Source. So if they have taken your fancy, you can go ahead and order them now. Otherwise, that's it from me, so have a great rest of your day, and TTFN.